Hello, welcome. We're excited for this webinar. So this is Managing Your Compliance Part 2. Hopefully you were lucky enough to join us for Part 1. Today's session is going to be hosted again by the lovely Alana from Libryo Professional Services team. She is one of our compliance specialists. So she is best suited to be giving you guys this presentation today. With that being said, Alana, over to you.
Thank you, Jen, and welcome everyone. So today I'm going to carry on where I left off with the previous webinar. So in part 1, and I'll talk about this just now, but in part 1 we looked at knowing your law, knowing what law you need to comply with, implementing systems to deal with it. And today we're going to be looking at what do you do after that. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in. So what we're going to be looking at, I'm going to do a quick introduction for you guys. Then we're going to look at knowing what the law requires versus knowing what you have to do to comply. Then we're going to be briefly looking at the difference between self-assessment versus a legal compliance audit. And then we're going to take a deeper dive into Libryo Assess, which is something that I'm very excited about. You'll see it when we get there. Okay, so for those of you that joined us for part 1, this is a bit of just a quick recap for those who were not part of that webinar. So just a look at why we do what we do as Libryo. And first up, we're a company of people that came together to do life and business differently, and to do life and business in a way that sustains and enables lives and livelihoods in a sustainable manner so that we can carry on doing what we're doing. We want to help companies, governments, and NGOs to operate more fairly, justly, and sustainably. And we hope to inspire other companies to act responsibly, especially where they are in jurisdictions that need social and environmental upliftment, because often those are the first victims of non-sustainable activities and actions. And so for too long, businesses have allocated significant resources to navigating the complexity that comes with legal compliance research, or alternatively, if it just gets too difficult, they settle for inaccurate solutions, which inevitably leads to actions that endanger people or endanger the environment. So but compliance is a function that it doesn't need to be expensive or time consuming if it is done properly and if it is done cleverly. And this can also easily be outsourced to technology. So with a platform like Libryo, we are managing to take the legwork out of legal compliance in a way. That's initial going through the law, knowing what it's all about, and then working from there. We are able to take that out, out of what a compliance professional needs to do and free them up to focus on implementing important changes that drive sustainability. So inevitably, why we do what we do is we want to provide freedom for compliance professionals to focus on implementing important change that drives sustainability. Now, often there's that question of, but is it money well spent? And there was a study done by the Podemon Institute and Globalscape on the true cost of compliance. And the conclusion was that the cost of non-compliance is 2.7 times more than the cost of compliance. So it makes sense to look at compliance, focus on compliance, and put resources towards compliance. Now, just part of the recap, 3 keys to legal compliance. First part is knowing the obligations that the law puts on you. And this is the first step in managing your operations in a just, sustainable, and fair manner. And you need to do that at all times, which is tricky, especially in legal contexts where there are often amendments, new changes, additional laws. So it becomes quite a tricky thing to do. The second part of legal compliance is putting a system in place to make sure that you are putting your legal obligations into practice, that you are building it into your operations, and that you are doing the stuff that you need to do in order to comply. And then the third part of it is checking your compliance, because you'll never know whether you comply unless you check it, and you'll never know what gaps you have unless you check what you are doing against what the law requires you to do. And so it's around this checking of compliance that we are going to be camping this morning a bit. Okay, so second up, knowing what the law requires versus knowing what to do to comply. And so any compliance manager will know and understand that knowing precisely what the law what law needs to be complied with does not automatically translate into the how-to of managing and complying with those laws. Putting those systems in place, that's where the tricky thing comes in. So we've often had customers ask the question, how do we know what needs to be put in place in order to meet our obligations? And how can we check that we are compliant and have met our obligations? So because at Libryo, we want to see compliance professionals freed up to focus on implementing those changes that drive sustainability, we decided to meet our customers halfway in terms of knowing what to comply with. And we came up with Libryo Assess, which started out as a way to check whether your operations comply or not. But in the process, we found that it became a really helpful tool in guiding compliance professionals in terms of the what and the how of compliance. So at Libryo, we have this byline, you might have seen it, now you know. So I'm taking a bit of poetic license here, and I'm going to say, now you know what to do to comply with Libryo Assess. So with Assess, some of the key features are that you now can know your risk level and compliance. And I'll show you just now where you can see that. So the Assess dashboard is updated in real time to reflect your current risk level and compliance status at your chosen site. So just by going on it, seeing the dashboard, you can see this is where I'm at. It also allows you to do it allows for rolling self-assessment. The law isn't static, so your assessments can't be static. So you can update your responses to assessment items at any point in time, and it will update your dashboard, it will update your risk level, your status, your percentage, your status overview. So you can always have a good view of what is currently happening at that site. It also allows you to collaborate in teams and assign tasks. So now it's easy to manage those compliance obligations via the Assess module. And then it also has the functionality of being able for you to attach documents to it. So evidence documents, you can attach it to the assessment items, and your team can then see, where you got your information from. And it also provides you with an audit trail. So it will show you when things have been changed, when a status has been updated, who updated it, what time it was updated, etc. So that's just a rough overview of Assess, but you will see it in a lot more detail when I take you through it. Okay, then just a quick overview of self-assessment versus a legal compliance audit, because we've got this question a number of times as well. So self-assessment, it is an internal proactive check. It's an organization saying, we want to see where we are at and how we are doing. And often it gets done before an external audit or an independent audit. It is subjective, and it usually looks at a higher level in terms of compliance within the company or the organization. And subjective, by that I mean, because it's done by people within the organization, you're coming from a specific angle. So hence the subjectivity. And then a self-assessment results in a determination of actions or set of actions towards compliance. Now, on the other hand, you have a compliance audit, which is an external check. It is objective because you've got an outside person looking in saying, this is what I'm seeing. And it is often also a much more detailed look at compliance and the measures that a company has put in place towards compliance with legal obligations. And then with the compliance audit, it results in recommendations towards compliance. So when we do an audit, for instance, we can't tell the site, you must do this, but we will put there, it is recommended that you put measures in place to prevent smoking within the workplace, for example. So that's just a good example, well, a brief differentiation between the two. And it's important to note that with Libryo Assess, it's not an audit module, it is a self-assessment module that can be very useful when you have audits because the information is there, the evidence is there, and it's going to make it a lot easier for an auditor, but it's an internal thing that gets done by you. It's not there for external purposes necessarily. So just important to note that.
Okay, so now I'm going to do a deep dive into Libryo Assess for you because I'm really excited to show you what the Assess module offers and how it can assist you in managing your compliance. So let's jump into it. So when you open up your Assess module, this is the dashboard that you will land on. If you go to the left-hand side of your menu on your legal register or your Libryo stream, you'll see it's right down close to the bottom, Assess, and you'll notice that it's still in beta form. So this means this is still in production, and it just means that there's still a lot of work happening in the background to add the features that we feel is going to really help you as a compliance professional in assessing your compliance and keeping track of your compliance within your operations. So first up, you'll see on the left-hand side here is your current risk level. Now this is indicated by way of traffic lights. So a high risk will be indicated in red, medium risk in yellow, and low risk will be in green. Now, the risk level is determined based on a set of metrics, and those metrics include your not assessed items. So how many items have you not assessed? It looks at your last activity date. So when last did you look at your assessment items and consider whether you still assess, has the status changed or not? It also looks at your non-compliant items. So how many non-compliant items do you have? And then a fairly recent addition to assess is your number of high-risk non-compliant items. So if I scroll down, you'll see your assessment items is at the bottom here. And you'll notice that there are these circles to the left-hand side of your assessment item. Now, if I keep scrolling down, you'll see here, there are red ones, which is high risk. There are the yellow ones, which are medium risks. And then you've got the green, which is low risk. Now, what this is these are assessment items where if you are non-compliant to them, the consequence of them is severe. You know, we're looking at potential injury, serious injury to employees, or serious damage to the environment that can lead to the likes of legal action or imprisonment. So they've got a high risk, they are a high risk item, they are a high risk aspect. Medium risk is, you know, your consequence is less severe, but still high. And then your low risk is, you know, these are activities that could lead to penalties, they could lead to fines. You know, it might not be the highest risk to the environment, but they still pose a risk, you know, as all legal requirements do. So that's where your rating comes from. And that's then also where what feeds into what determines your risk level at this point in time. Then on the right-hand side, you will see an overview of your assessment status. And this is percentage-based, and it looks at, you know, how many of your assessment items are you non-compliant with? How many are you compliant in? How many of those assessment items are not applicable? And this could be for various reasons. Often it's because of your current operations. That particular item will be not applicable. And then there's your not assessed. How many items do you still need to look at? Do you still need to consider from a compliance perspective? Then also on your dashboard, you will see the list of your assessment items. You will see the response. So what is the response to that? You'll see there's not assessed, there comes an assessed, it's compliant, so you'll see what your response is. You can also get an idea of when it was last answered and who it was answered by. And you'll see this now when we get into the actual demo of completing an assessment item. And then, you know, as you would see, there's a long list of assessment items, and this can be very overwhelming. You know, and as they say, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it piece by piece. So what we've done in order to help you eat this elephant piece by piece is we've given you different filtering options. Now there's below here is the option to filter by response. So if you want to see which of your assessment items have you not assessed yet, you can click on that. If you want to see which ones you are not compliant with, you can click on that. And you will see a much shorter list of assessment items appear, which just, it's not nearly as overwhelming as seeing the whole list of them. The other filtering option, which is the one that I prefer and that I tend to use most of the time, is the filter by category. Now you'll see if you open up there, you've got the main categories, which is environmental and health and safety. There's some other categories, but most would be environmental and health and safety. And there are subcategories like air quality management. There's your emergency management, there's waste management, stormwater management, and the same with occupational health and safety. There are the different categories. So this just makes it easy for you to say, okay, you know, I've got limited time. Let's look at one of the categories and we see what's happening in it. So this is your landing page, and this is where you do it, you know, you manage your assessment, your self-assessment from. So for the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to look at an aspect that will be relevant to most companies or organizations at some point or the other in your lifetime. But funny enough, we find that often customers overlook it, or they haven't sufficiently addressed it within their risk assessments, within their management systems. And that is the aspect around the protection of pregnant and breastfeeding mothers in the workplace. Now, this particular aspect sits within occupational health and safety, and in particular in the protected group health and safety management subcategory. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to say apply. And suddenly one can breathe, because there's only two aspects here, or assessment items, that need to be assessed. Now, as you can see, the first one, which is to conduct a risk assessment, I've already previously done, so I'm not going to worry about that now. I want to make sure that all my assessment items are being assessed. So I'm going to look at the one that hasn't been assessed. And this is around the implementation of processes to safeguard pregnant and breastfeeding mothers in the workplace. So I click on the assessment item. Now what you'll see is at the top here, you'll see the different responses or the status that you can select. So there's a yes, I'm compliant with this assessment item. No, I don't comply. This is not applicable to me, or you leave it as not assessed. So I want to see, what do I need to do in order to comply? So what is this assessment item all about? And so what we do is all your assessment items will have the requirements which this assessment item is based on. And if you open up your requirement, the first one there is Basic Conditions of Employment Act. You'll see the section from which this assessment item originates from. And this is similar to what your legal register looks like when you are under the requirements section of it. You click on it and it will take you to the section where it tells you what you need to do. So in this case, it will say that no employer may require or permit a pregnant employee or an employee who is nursing her child to perform work that is hazardous for her health or the health of her child. And then it goes on to say, during an employee's pregnancy, there are certain things that need to be considered. She's not allowed to do certain types of work, and you need to assess that. So that's the one requirement. Let's just scroll down, and I want to see what is the other requirement that talks to this particular assessment item. And this is the code of practice, which if you look at, I'm going to go back to the first one. If you look at the section 26 dealing with it, it will say here, the minister must issue a code of practice. So that's where that code of practice comes from. Okay, so if we look at the code of practice and we look at the sections dealing with this, so it talks to, what an employer is responsible for doing. Employers should identify, record, and regularly review the potential risks, and also the protective measures and adjustments to working arrangements for pregnant and breastfeeding employees. So now the question comes up, now you've read this. Okay, so how are you going to prove that you are doing this? How do you know that you are doing what needs to get done? And so this is where the title of the assessment item, we've tried to formulate it in a way that it gives you an indication of what you can do. And so we've said, implement processes to safeguard pregnant and breastfeeding mothers in the workplace, which tells you that if you've got processes in place, if you've got a procedure, if you've got a plan, anywhere where you've detailed how you are going to be dealing with pregnant and breastfeeding mothers in the workplace, then you will be compliant. You should be compliant. So this is how, as I mentioned in the initial part of the webinar, it initially started as a way to assess your compliance, but we found that in us developing it, we've actually been able to use it to guide you in terms of what is required in terms of compliance. So implement processes. Okay. So now you need to go and look at your system and say, do I have a process in place in order to do that? If you say yes, then you're compliant. So you can click on yes. And it's going to ask you for a justification. So it's going to ask you for a reason. Why do you say yes? So I'm going to say, what am I going to say? Pregnant and breastfeeding procedure. And often you'll have a procedure number. So, because this is how we check when we do an audit. This is what we look for. We look for procedure, and then we will always note down the document title or the document number, the reference, so that you've got that there's an audit trail. So in this case, it's always good to have an audit trail. So I'm just going to say PR01 pregnancy breastfeeding procedure. And so suddenly anyone that's going to look here, they can see, okay, this is the reason why you're saying you've got a procedure, and they can go and track down that particular procedure should they want to. So you click OK. And now that will be captured as part of your audit trail. So immediately it jumps to your audit trail, and you can now see here that I changed the compliance status from unassessed to yes. And I also added a comment. And if you jump to comments, you will now see what the note is. If I had said no, I might have said there, okay, before I get there, let me show you another feature. So you've now said, yes, we have a procedure. What is really helpful is adding your evidence, because evidence really is crucial. You know, we often say to our customers, think about it this way. You might say, yes, we've got a procedure, but if you had to stand in a court of law and to prove, how are you going to prove that you are doing what you say you're doing? So always try and make sure that there is evidence in whatever form. It could be a document, it could be a photo. Make sure there's evidence. So in this case, we've got evidence. You can upload this evidence to the platform, which will then make it available for anyone else wanting to check this. Okay, so I'm going to go now upload my document. Let's go here. I've got my demo. So I've got my document. Now I'm going to upload it. Okay, so it's uploading, and there it is uploaded. And now I post it. And it becomes part of the audit trail. So it should also show up under files, but now it's not wanting. So we have had a slight issue in terms of the files tab, but also what it should do is once you've uploaded a document, it should then take it to files. So if you clicked on files, you would then see the files listed against this particular assessment item. What you can also do is you can assign a task. So let's go to, I'm quickly going to change this. So you now look at this and you realize, well, actually, we don't have a procedure. You click on no, you say, no procedure available. So it will change the status. You'll see there the audit trail is, it was changed from yes to no. And you can go and look at the comments to see why has it been changed. Oh, there is no procedure available. Now, I want to make sure that we get to a point where we are compliant with this. So I can go and create a task for a teammate of mine to say, pregnancy and breastfeeding procedure. You can add whatever you want into it, a description if you want to give a further description. You can set a due date by which it needs to be in place, and you then assign whoever you want to assign it to. I'm going to assign it to myself. You can set priority levels. You can set the project which it relates to if you run multiple projects from one site, and you can set followers. So I'm going to set my follower, I'm going to add a teammate of mine, and I'm going to add my follower. And I create my task. And so now you have you've considered your assessment item, you've considered your requirements. You have looked and said, are we compliant? Are we not compliant? You have added proof of it or not proof of it. And you have created a task to make sure that there is someone that is taking responsibility for getting this in place. You've set your dates, so you can now go and check, has this been done? Has this not been done? And in this way, you can manage this aspect of compliance in order to make sure that you are compliant. And so now you'll see suddenly your rolling assessment looks different because you now have assessed all of it. So you've got no assessed, not assessed, you've got no not applicables. Your risk level is still high. Why? Because your non-compliant items, more than 40% of your assessment items are non-compliant. So it will remain a high risk until you have sorted out this particular assessment item or this aspect of compliance. And so in this way, you can then manage your assessment internally. So I'm just going to take that off because I want to show you how your dashboard changes. So I've now selected, so now by default selects all the categories, all my assessment items, and you'll see it goes back to showing me what is my overall assessment looking like. And so in this way, you can get a quick feel for where are you in terms of your level of compliance. You can go into the detail if you want to, but it just helps you as the compliance manager manage your actual compliance. Now, something that I just want to note, because this is a question we have often got, is at this point in time, we don't have the functionality yet of drawing a report. So once you've done all your assessment items, you've gone through it, you now want a report. We don't have that yet. It is one of the features that is going to be developed. And we are very much looking forward to that. But at this point in time, we don't have that feature yet. So this is how you can see what your assessment, where you are standing in terms of your compliance. And so that is Libryo Assess in a nutshell. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I really hope that it helps you. For those of you who've got the module, I really trust that it's going to make your life a lot easier. Like I say, we are very excited about it. And if at any point in time you have questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to our customer success team via the live chat function on your Libryo platform. And if they can't help you, they will direct you to one of us from a professional services point of view, and we will help you with your assess. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it, and all the best for managing your compliance. Thank you.